大家好。
大家好，你好。
Welcome to Tea and Coffee Society. Well, John, thank you again for coming here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's nice to be here.
I'm very curious about your research in China. I mean, you are carrying on this research in China. It's you told me it's education-based migration between Canada and China.
Yeah, there's a number of schools in China that are administered through Canadian institutions. So it's a very interesting link between China and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going on for about 20 years, and it's just something I've been researching.
Okay, cool. Well, do you mind to tell me more about your research?
Sure. In China, there are traditional education systems, what we might call public systems, and then there are more sort of private or semi-private institutions that have adopted other nationality or nations' education systems, and Canada has actually been at the front of this.
Oh.
So it's an interesting link between the two countries.
Okay. Yes. Oh, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So do you enjoy it?
Very much. China is endlessly fascinating. It's a wonderful country with wonderful people, but and I'm really interested in these links between China, not just Canada, but the world. But since I'm a Canadian, it's easier to do that sort of research.
So I'm just curious, what's the discovery you found so far from this research?
I think the most interesting discovery is the sort of role Canada plays in these schools. Even though they are based in China and they primarily educate Chinese students, high school students, Canada plays a significant role and has done so for a long time. Okay. And they only exist really because of many Canadian developments. So I'm really interested in those sort of links.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So what's the result you intend to find from this research?
I'm really looking for those depths of connections through history. So specifically starting in the mid-1990s through to the opening of the schools near the early 2000s. And then to where the students ended up. Many have ended up living in Canada. Families have come to Canada. Many have returned home to China, and many have gone throughout the world. I know people in Australia, New Zealand, and America. So it's a fascinating sort of space of research because it involves a huge amount of the world, or especially around this Pacific region.
So there's a strong, deep connection, like educational connection between Canada and China.
Well, in Canada, especially in the last couple decades, education has been a significant path towards immigration into Canada. So by these students coming to Canada, they often, many have become Canadian citizens or permanent residents. So it is a significant way that Chinese citizens might end up as Canadian citizens one day. And again, that really just strengthens those links because many still have families in China, and many will go back and forth, even maybe do business and share time between both countries throughout their lives.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Doing that in China must be a very unique experience.
Yeah, it is. It's the people there have been very accommodating, but there are challenges, especially around language. I know some basic Chinese, but it's not as advanced as I would like. So there is a level of interpretation and distance. But because these institutions are educating students in English and Chinese, there is significant material available in English as well for me, which is that was one of my frameworks of my research that I've lived in China for almost 3 years, but there's a limit to my understanding of the country. 3 years is a good start.
Like, to my knowledge, I think most people in Beijing speak English, right?
No, many in sort of an educated class. If you graduate out of a university there, you've been trained, but you've usually been trained to read and write English, which is very productive for things like computers and internet use. But in terms of speaking, it's extremely limited. Very rare, yes.
I see.
And I'd say in general fluency is relatively low, even though it is increasing, every year.
Okay.
Many people are very interested in learning English. It's seen as the language of business, language of the West. So for many Chinese, that is something they're interested in learning if they're going to learn a language. But I know many have learned languages from all over the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there's a strong passion, right, in learning English in Beijing?
English, yes, certainly, and wanting to travel the world, especially to come to see North America. either to be educated or to live or just to visit. There's many motivations for coming.